Hello, Trojan fans. This is the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host.
What's up with that
I
intro?
know. I just ate a sandwich and had some Diet Cherry Coke, and I know it would not go well. I could try. It's like, hello. See, this wasn't going to be good. So
That sounded fine, I thought.
okay. Well, hello, Trojan fans. Yeah, this is Ryan Abraham, and I'm alongside Mr. Triple Double himself,
Hello.
Connor Morrissette.
Hello, Trojan fan. There we go.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man. You got the glorious beard going.
Yes.
I got some scruff going. Maybe not beard, but yeah, we got a fun show. It's a bye-week show, so it's a chill. This is relax. This is like casual Wednesday show because there's not a lot going on. We got some news stuff to talk about. We got injuries, a field update. You know, Howard Jones Field, what's going on. Miller Moss and his quick trigger. We're going to talk about that a little bit. The resurgence of the tight ends and D'Anton Lynn, the defensive coordinator, who we'll hear from later today when we go down to practice. But he was on Trojans Live. So I want to talk with Connor about all that stuff going on. But what everyone's thinking about is this looming trip to Ann Arbor. So that's kind of what our show will be today. Again, casual show. We are live on the YouTubes. If you're over there, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have comments or questions, you can put them in the chat. We don't have a whole lot of questions today. So if you have questions and you're in the chat watching, please put it in there. And we appreciate when you do that. So just put question and then I'll start and go in there. If you have questions or comments for the show, podcast@uscfootball.com is the email address. You can also call or text us at 424-254-9141. Of course, if you have the Apple podcasting app, you got an iPhone, you want to pull that up and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. That'd be awesome. And if you have Spotify, you can leave us a 5-star rating there as well. And like I mentioned, we are on YouTube. So get over and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's been growing quite a bit. We're over 20,000 subscribers now. So, yay, thank you all. That's pretty cool. A lot of it has to do with Connor and those instant analysis videos.
I don't know.
Yeah. What are you doing, Connor? How are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'll have instant analysis today. Yeah. Still amazed at this 2-0 start and excited to get into the future of the season here, talk about the schedule. It is the bye week, like you said, so some time to rest up before we have that first road trip to Michigan. We've been texting a little bit about that today, so
yeah,
that's certainly really exciting. And the more time goes on and the more we watch some of these teams, Ryan, things are looking good for USC. That just continues to be the trend that I see.
That is the trend. You got to keep taking care of business. We talked about it heading into Utah State. Notre Dame lost. Oregon didn't look very good. Penn State didn't look very good. They were in battles. So you don't want to be in a battle with an overmatched team. USC wasn't. So that's definitely a positive. And, we will have more information on our Michigan trip. We'll do a meetup Friday night. I've emailed one venue. Connor and I don't get in until 8 p.m., so we'll get there a little bit later, but we'd love to meet you guys. It's the East Coast time, right? I think that's what part of the problem. I think our flight leaves a little after noon, and we don't get until 8 p.m. It's kind of crazy. I believe it's East Coast time.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so I was like, we leave at noon. It would be, but this is a whole different deal for us, traveling like this. Chicago, you go into, but you fly to Chicago, it's only 2-hour difference, so it helps you a little bit. You drive to South Bend, and it's a 3-hour. It's the extra hour. But going all the way to Detroit, it's a 3-hour deal. I was like, wait, do we stop somewhere? I'm like, no, I got a direct flight. But we don't get until 8 p.m. Do want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's. So amazing. They've been awesome with us. We had so much fun giving away all those bags in Las Vegas. The Trader Joe's bags were super popular. We gave away 200 of them. I got a snack for you to try out if you haven't. When you go buy the cookies, because I always go by there, they have some different tubs of different kind of cookies. So there's a tub of these Dunker chocolate chip cookies. So they're long, almost like these finger cookies, but they're flat on one side with chocolate dipping, and then it's chocolate chips on the other, chocolate chip cookie on the other side. And man, you dunk them in milk. It's pretty amazing. So go check those out. I think it's the chocolate chip cookie Dunkers. Very dunkable. Very good. So
that does sound really good. I'll have to check those out too.
Yeah, all the bottom of it is all chocolate. So yeah. Yeah, that's good. But thanks again to Trader Joe's. They're great. We also have a partner autograph I want to let you guys know about, the Autograph app. You can get all of the USCFootball.com content, including this podcast over there on the Autograph app. So use the code USC. I'll put a link in the show description too if you want to download it there. So you can get this this content from the podcast and any of the other articles we put up there. And the more content you consume, you could unlock rewards like discounted tickets, memorabilia, USC merch, all that kind of fun stuff. So every time you read something from USCFootball.com, you earn coins, and you can use that in the app. So it's pretty cool. Come check it out. And it helps support us too. So use the code USC when you go get the Autograph app. All right, Connor. Well, how you doing? How's your bye week going so far?
Good. And I can elaborate on what I was saying earlier. I think that LSU game, like the more I sort of see the schedule and watch some of the teams who USC is going to play in the future, I think that LSU game, how that played out against some of the better opponents, that's sort of how I see the season going. I really think this defense is going to continue to be good. I don't expect any big drop-off, especially with USC not going up against any offensive juggernauts. Like, it's not like they have a Texas on the schedule or a team that's really going to scare you with what they do offensively. There's some talented teams for sure, but it's just a little bit different. And so that LSU game, what happened? Second half didn't really look great for USC, but the defense gives them a chance to win. And at the end, the offense makes enough plays to win the game. And you just look at some of these matchups. So on the road at Michigan, USC has to pass the test of staying really composed and doing well in a hostile environment. They had some of that against LSU in Las Vegas, but that Michigan game, how that team is set up, their offense isn't great, so you'd think the defense for USC will be able to give them a chance to win. And then on offense, if they have the ball at the end with a chance to go get the victory like they did against LSU, I think they'll have a shot to do that. And just all these teams, it's similar. Like Wisconsin doesn't have a great offense. Minnesota doesn't have a great offense. Penn State, their offense is better, but they won't blow you away. Maryland, Rutgers, Washington, a bit of an unknown. Nebraska's probably good, but in the second half, they were shut out at home against Colorado. I don't think UCLA is very good. Notre Dame wasn't great. So defensively, USC is going to be in a lot of these games. Then with Lincoln Riley, Miller Moss, that offense, if they can continue to improve, the offensive line stays healthy, you should be in these games at the end, and then I'd bet on Riley and Miller Moss to get the job done at the end of these games. So I continue to be just really impressed with what I've seen so far, and the trajectory looks really good, not what I expected.
No, for sure. I agree with you there. You're getting some love in the chat about, hey, is that the LSU team you picked? Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think you don't want to get over your skis here. You don't want to get too like, oh my God, this is all setting up like Notre Dame goes into Kyle Field and beats Texas A&M on the road, and then they're like, well, they'll be undefeated going into the USC game, and they lose the very next week. There's way too many pitfalls and potholes among this USC schedule, and when you do make a turnaround like this, you're still not that far away from where things were before. You're just a couple games removed from giving up tons of everything on defense. So it's good. I think their USC fans should be more optimistic that the chances going into the season for the rest of the schedule look pretty good. And you look at those teams, and they don't look maybe as good as you thought they were. Now, some teams probably are better. I think Nebraska is going to be better than a lot of people think. And we'll see. They have a really good defense. We'll see how that sort of pans out. But if you're looking at a schedule like, man, they're never going to beat that team, there's not a team like that on USC's schedule now. So it's more about, and I've said this from the very beginning, like USC taking care of their own business. They need to be able to keep scoring on offense and, run the ball. We saw them do that against Utah State. You got to do it against better teams. Continue to play good defense. They played great defense against LSU. Kept you in a game where you had against an opponent that had athletes as good or better than yours. And we haven't seen a USC defensive effort like that. So if you have a defense that can keep you in games when you're in a kind of similar talent situation, you have to trust that the offense is going to be able to score enough points. So I think it's setting up really well, but it's like a 1 week at a time thing. I think the unfortunate part is we'll see what Michigan does this weekend against Arkansas State, but I mean, I think a lot of people are going in this Michigan game expecting USC to win, where before you were like, nah, that's just mark that one as a loss. And how can you make the playoff when you obviously lose your opener at Michigan, the defending national champions? expectations are now raised. Like, I think they can go in there and win. So I don't know how USC kind of deals with that, because they were an underdog against LSU, and then, big favorite obviously against Utah State. They were certainly an underdog against Michigan, and when the lines come out, they might not be anymore. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think there'll be a slight underdog just because of the game being on the road. The offensive line, we need to see what that looks like on the road before I can say for sure, okay, all this great stuff's going to happen. But I really do think it sets up nicely for them. And Ryan, I believe D'Anton Lynn's a cheat code. I've come to that determination. Like, it's Utah State. They have all sorts of issues. Shutting them out was impressive. What USC did against LSU really, really blew me away on the defensive side of the ball. So to your point about week in and week out, injuries are a concern, and Mason Cobb didn't practice yesterday. Eric Gentry didn't practice yesterday, but those guys are both expected to be back against Michigan. Jalen Smith didn't play against Utah State. He did practice yesterday. He's expected to be fully ready for Michigan. Always a concern at any level, missing key guys. So if there are some big injuries, we can talk about those in the future. But right now, USC, for the most part, avoided the injury bug. Kilian O'Connor, the backup center, will be out a few weeks. Outside of him, you don't have any long-term things with any guys on the two deep. So that's something to monitor. But the way Lynn has coached these guys up and how he's been able to get the most out of a USC roster that I thought had some holes, specifically on the defensive line, has blown me away. So I start there, and I just think the defensive turnaround, it's going to give them a chance to win every week, because the way the schedule is set up, you don't play Washington from last year. It's like, oh, Michael Penix and those tight ends, and, well, oh, man, that you're in trouble. Roma Dunze, that receiving core, there's no one even close to that on this schedule. So they have a great opportunity here. It's crazy to say. Lincoln Riley deserves a lot of credit. I had him not doing as well, which has been well documented. I've changed my tune real quick based on what I've seen, and it starts with Lynn.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the injury situation, because we did talk about that yesterday. You guys were out of practice, so Mason Cobb we got to interview last Thursday. Seemed like he was okay, sounded fine. He ended up not playing against Utah State. Okay, and yesterday wasn't at practice. It's a bye week. Eric Gentry is another guy that wasn't out there at practice. So maybe give it updates on on the linebacker situation, but also at center, the backup center, and you mentioned Jalen Smith, who didn't play against Utah State either. Just give me an update on all those guys and what you've been hearing.
Sure. So it sounds like both Gentry and Cobb will play against Michigan, which is huge, and Gentry specifically has been incredible so far this season. You could argue he's been USC's best defensive player. It's probably between him, Kamari Ramsey, maybe Anthony Lucas, but Eric Gentry, he's been so impactful. So you want to get him back as quick as you can. Behind him, I think we saw the defensive staff show what they would do if people couldn't play against Utah State. So you would have Desmond Stevens as the backup Mike. Easton Mascarenas-Arnold is healthy, so we'll pencil him in as the Mike starter. And then in the past, it would be Mason Cobb and Eric Gentry switching off as the Wills. Sometimes they'd be on the field at the same time. So you're down two weak side linebackers. If USC had a game today, it probably would be the case that neither would play. So behind those guys, you'd be looking at Rajon Davis. You'd be looking at Garrison Madden. He got into the game against Utah State. Maybe you'd see some rotation with Desmond Stevens coming in. He's the backup Mike, so maybe if they feel like Easton Mascarenas-Arnold could play some Will and have Desmond Stevens be the Mike because he's prepared there so much this offseason. He's a true freshman. You probably don't want to throw him in at a different spot. Maybe that would be the case. They don't have a ton of depth at linebacker, so you can deal with one injury like we saw USC did against Utah State with Cobb not playing. It was fine just to have Easton Mascarenas-Arnold and Gentry play with the ones. Another injury, that could be troublesome, so it's good that those guys will be back. And then with Jalen Smith not playing, John Humphrey stepped in, ton of depth at cornerback, so not a massive concern. Of course, you want your starting corner to be fully healthy against Michigan, and he will be, so that's good. But a little bit less concerned with a cornerback injury than I would be a linebacker one. And then, so Kilian O'Connor being out, and he's going to be out for a little bit, it sounds like. Lincoln Riley mentioned yesterday he's avoided a long-term season-ending injury, which is good, but I still expect him to be out a few weeks. That means the backup center behind Jonah Monheim is Gino Quinones, and then the emergency center is Amos Talele. So he's a guy, if you're down to your third-string center, probably not ideal. But Gino was the backup center last year before he got hurt, so there's some continuity there at least. But Kilian O'Connor, he's a guy who's done all the things right. He earned that backup job despite being a walk-on. You hope he can get healthy soon. he's someone who's really important as a practice player for USC, and he is the backup center. So if Jonah did get hurt, there's now a hole at the roster. The USC staff felt like O'Connor gave him the best chance as the backup, and now he's no longer there. So Gino would be in. At least he's taken some center reps and done a good job at that in the past. But it could turn into a big problem if Jonah gets hurt. So got to hope that obviously doesn't happen because he's so important.
Yeah. So relatively pretty good health there.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit of linebacker scare, but seems like guy
the
more precautionary.
Overall thing is everyone outside of O'Connor on the 2D should be healthy for Michigan, and that's huge.
Yeah, you want that going into it. We've heard there's been some pretty big injuries around the country.
Yeah, always are.
So as long as you can avoid, the longer you can avoid the injury bug, the better. And certainly USC's got some spots that we didn't think were quite as deep, and maybe some that are deeper than we had anticipated. But you want to keep that relative health that USC has going and go into a tough road environment and see what you can do against Michigan. One of those potential key contributors against the Wolverines, looking at Anthony Lucas. And It seemed like, is he got like a whole bunch of sacks or anything yet? No. But if you just watch him, he jumps out at you a little bit. There's been, NFL scouts that were looking at him. And whenever you have like a former 5-star player, he's going to get some kind of attention. He wasn't good attention, I think, last year, but this year seems to be like, okay, he seems to get it and he's playing. I know Lincoln Riley talked about it a little bit, but any thoughts on what's going on with Anthony Lucas?
He's been awesome. I think he's another guy who the D'Anton Lynn experience has given him a big boost. Being able to be taught by Lynn and Eric Henderson has given him a big bump in confidence. And the whole talk from D'Anton Lynn and from Riley yesterday when he was asked about Anthony Lucas, it was just all about he's always had this in him, but now it was showing up and doing it every day and being there on every play. The more that time goes on, Ryan, I think last year on defense, it was just so freaking bad that I don't really like it was almost like a wasted year for some of these guys. I don't really get on Anthony Lucas. Oh, you didn't live up to your 5-star potential last year. What the heck? I don't think he was put in a very good position to succeed like everyone on that defense. So last year I was like, okay, like here you go. You should have an impact player, and it never really worked out for him. I was a little skeptical that he'd be able to reach his ceiling so quickly this year. He's a guy who's just been who's had an amazing turnaround because of this coaching staff, and he's looked like the 5-star player so far. I'd still like to see a little bit more of a consistent pass rush, especially against some of these better teams, but I think the game plan against LSU was to keep everything in front of them, stop the run, and give Nussmeier the checkdowns, but try not to give him too much stuff over the top, and they won the game, and by and large, they executed that game plan really well. So in the future, for Anthony Lucas to now take that next step, he's already taken a step from last year. We've only played 2 games, but to take the next one, can he be that home wrecker? Can he be that guy off the edge who isn't just stopping the run and getting pressures here and there? He's a guy who gets 2 sacks a game against a really good team or is always in the backfield. And with D'Anton Lynn coaching, I don't see why he can't get there. It's a long way to go, of course, but that next step for him now is to just pop, and let's see if he can get some more stats on the sheet, some more sacks, more tackles for loss, because so far through 2 games he's done really well.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the motor, right? You can see him.
He's playing angry.
Be very active, yeah.
He got in a fight with the tackle, Emory Jones, against LSU on that extra point. Like, he's playing with a fire that I don't think we saw last year.
Yeah, which you like. And I think it kind of stems back to the confidence in the defense has right now, where if you're giving up, 3rd and 15s and just chunk plays all over the place, and you just don't feel like the coaches are putting you in a great position to succeed. And I think that's probably what it was like for the first 2 years of Lincoln Riley if you're playing on the defensive side. Now, that first year, they got a lot of turnovers, and that can give you some confidence. But when those went away, I think the confidence went away too. And, if you have a guy like that maybe it's hard to be motivated. Well, he looks motivated right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of the players do. They look like they're confident in what they're being told. It's funny. I saw Joel Klatt this morning. He was on Cowherd. And one of the things I've always harped on is like when you talk to Norm Chow about running his offenses, like the whole concept was, if you want to just break it down to like basics, it was like, we want to have something that's easy for us to run and looks complicated to the defense. And I think I think the Baltimore Ravens kind of started doing this too. They want to play offense on defense. So you're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to do something like, we're not running this whole complicated thing. We're going to run something that there's simple concepts for the players, but we give them these different looks and present it in different ways that it looks like a lot more complicated to the offense. So it's something the offense has been trying to do to defenses for a long time. And Joel Klatt was like talking to some of the architects or whatever of like, what the tree that D'Anton Lynn comes from. And that's sort of like the basic concept there, where they want to do the same thing. Like, why can't we do something that's simple for us to run, but looks complicated for oppositions? And it seems like that's what's happening, because when you see players being as confident as they are, they know what they're supposed to be doing, moving around, playing fast. It just says like, okay, they know what the heck they're doing. Where if you watch the last couple of years, you're like, they're not sure what they're supposed to be doing. They're hoping there's hope as opposed to there's what we're going to do. And I think that's from, your the sleeper age or whatever, D'Anton Lynn, you were talking about, like, boom. I think this is his philosophy, and you saw it work at UCLA last year, and it's working, I think, so far for USC.
A guy, hearing you describe that, Ryan, a guy who I think of as Kamari Ramsey, who Lynn said this week, having Kamari Ramsey at USC and already have a year in his system has allowed him to install even more packages and more of the defense that he wants to install at USC this year than he could at UCLA, because he has someone who understands it so well and is almost like a coach on the field. He said, Lynn, of Ramsey, he has great instincts, and I think there's a difference between smart people and smart football players. He's a guy who just understands the game. In August, we were able to install some stuff that I wasn't able to install this past year just because he helped speed up that process. So can't really get a higher compliment than that from your defensive coordinator. And I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back here. Remember when we ranked the transfers, Ryan, I had Kamari Ramsey number 1.
I like it.
In the offseason. I got something right. Feels good to hit on that. I thought he would be impactful, but I didn't think he would be this impactful. He's even better than I ever could have imagined, and that's sort of the whole USC defense right now, better than I feel like anyone could have imagined. Did you think it would be this good this fast?
No, I didn't think. I thought it would be good, but not like, I didn't think it'd be in the top 25. They could be a top 25 defense right now. I mean,
should be
this season, yeah. It's funny. I think I had Ramsey 3, but I also put Humphrey early as 5 because I was just like, both those guys know the system.
Yeah.
So you had to drop Humphrey down a little bit, but whatever, that's fine. But Ramsey has been an integral part of this. What other takeaways did you get from Lynn's appearance on Trojans Live? I know we're going to hear from him later today, but I think one of the things is we thought like Easton Mascarenas-Arnold would be having the green dot. It sounds like it's more Ramsey, but
it's Akili.
I'm sorry, Akili. Yeah.
Kilian Arnold.
From a safety spot, though,
Yeah.
not the linebacker spot. But any thoughts on that and other things that he said from Trojans Live?
He had a ton to say. He sort of came off to me like really confident and out of his shell a little bit more than we've seen him. I felt like, I don't want to say he was nervous heading into the season, but I'm speaking for him, but I don't even know if he thought it was going to be this good this fast. And hearing him on Trojans Live, he was revealing a little bit more. He was going more into detail than he's done in the past. I believe he knows that he has a really, really good defense, and we sort of saw that in that interview. I definitely recommend checking it out on the USC Athletics YouTube channel if you didn't get a chance to watch it. And if you don't feel like watching it, you can read my takeaways on our website, which continue to do really well. People love every time D'Anton Lynn says anything, it's news, and that story got a lot of clicks. So thank you to the people who already have read it. But yeah, it was Akili Arnold wearing the green dot, and he talked about how they relay the plays from the sidelines. So the helmet communication, that goes to the defensive backs, and then Akili Arnold gets the safeties and the corners and the nickel all in the right spot, and then they signal from the sideline using hand signals to Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, and then he gets the front set up. He calls the checks. He makes the audibles. So Akili, it's his job to get the secondary set up, and then Easton, he gets everyone else set up. But he's the guy who, even though he doesn't have the in-helmet communication, they trust him so much, and he's so smart that he can check and make audibles and stuff. And sometimes that'll come from the sideline. Other times he can just do what he needs to do on his own. So how big have those transfer pickups been to Ryan? It's rare. We didn't see this last year. Christian Roland-Wallace came in, and he had a really nice season, but a lot of the defensive transfers last season who we thought would be good, they were not.
Yeah.
And the guys that USC targeted have been huge. and that's just been another big step in this turnaround. Like Easton Mascarenas Arnold playing every single snap against LSU, and Akili playing every single snap against LSU. That is huge. You had guys last year who we expected to be a little bit better, and even if they played a lot, maybe didn't play a lot, it just didn't work out. So getting linchpins on defense from the transfer portal, guys who are going to play every down and they trust and are stalwarts, and not only are just playing really well, but they're like the brains behind the operation. That's another reason I think the defense is a lot better than I expected. There just hasn't been areas of there hasn't been any breakdowns. Everything's just gone so smoothly, and I think those the Arnold brothers, they deserve a lot of credit for that. They've been instrumental.
Yeah, you get a couple guys, two of the best players on Oregon State's really good defense, and maybe they weren't as heralded as some of the other transfers, but man, to get, those two guys from Oregon State, Ramsey from UCLA, and then the late pickup of a Gavin Meyer, even like a Nate
and
Clifton. Greedy Vance, like a late pickup there, and as
all these guys have been awesome. There's not one guy out of those guys you listed that's like, oh yeah, I don't really know about it. They've all been way better, or not way better, but better than expected to me. Even Ramsey, who I knew was really good, like he's been even better. And I think that comes back to the coaching. Like those guys could be really good on their own, but if Alex Grinch brought them in last season and just threw them out there and asked them to do what he wanted them to do, would it look anything close to this? And the answer is obviously no.
Yeah. We had an interesting comment in the chat from Jeff. I'm a Michigan and USC alum living in Ann Arbor. USC will blow out Michigan 38-9. Last time USC played at Michigan was 1958, and Michigan won 20-19. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout, but I think, I mean, you got to like USC's chances to go in there and compete and play well, where before you thought, I don't know if they're going to even be competitive in that game.
Michigan's definitely not as good as people thought, which makes sense. New coaching staff. I think they had to replace all 11 offensive starters, new defense. So it makes sense that they wouldn't be quite as good. But if USC is able to blow them out at home, that would be back-to-back Power 5 blowout losses. Then then you got to ask questions about Sharon Moore. Then everything kind of comes apart for them. So I do expect them to play a lot better than they did against Texas. First of all, I think Texas's offense is just better than USC's, so they were able to put Michigan in some tough spots. All those third downs that they converted in the first half on those first two scoring drives, it was like, okay, Michigan has a chance to get them off the field. That happened 6 times.
And they wouldn't get,
they couldn't do it. So could USC do that? Maybe, but Texas is just in a different spot. The one area I'm concerned about, Miller Moss has been tremendous. I just wonder if Michigan's able to dial up some pressures and put him in positions that he hasn't been in. This is a defense where LSU, Blake Baker's new, but what kind of difference makers do they have on that side of the ball? Not really a whole lot outside of Harold Perkins, and I don't think he did a whole lot, so credit to the USC staff for that.
Yeah.
But Michigan, they can make Moss uncomfortable. The offensive line, it's new. Alani Noah's sort of been up and down to start the year, although overall the line's been fine. I wonder from a blowout perspective, if Michigan is able to get some pressure on Moss and just force some turnovers, make it kind of ugly, could we see Michigan do better than we expect in this game? That would be my concern, but based on what we've seen the first 2 games, I wouldn't predict that. I think this is going to be a close game, and whoever has the ball last, I sort of see it like that LSU game. Whoever has it at the end should win this one, and I think USC has a great chance, a way better one than I expected.
Jeff also commented in the chat, hope to see a lot of USC faithful in Ann Arbor, 327 East Hoover for the official USC alumni tailgate. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know they were doing one of those. But Jeff, if you want to email me, Ryan at uscfootball.com, because we are planning our meetup, and you might have some ideas for that. And we've had some fun ones over the years. Maybe the biggest one, well, Vegas was probably the biggest one, but that was amazing. We did 3 nights of meetups in Vegas, and then a huge pregame tailgate party at Flankers. But our Texas one, where we took over an entire bar, 200. I think it was 250 people. We had people outside waiting in line in the rain to get in. We had no idea that many people were going to come out to the meetup, but it was, Austin's a little bit different than Ann Arbor. And we did find a bar that was owned by a USC person. And we basically just took the whole thing over, and it was a lot of fun. But Jeff, you might be able to help us planning the meetup. So drop me an email if you wouldn't mind. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if you would like to, I would love to do that. Want to talk tight ends a little bit, Connor, because there's been a resurgence. What is it, 7 or 8 catches for tight ends in the Utah State game?
I think 8, yeah.
Yeah, there was 4, and then
4,
1
3,
and 3.
1, yeah.
Yeah, but Lake McCree, on pace for like the most catches since Fred Davis. RJ was writing about that a little bit. But what's been the talk about the tight ends from practice?
Well, I got some information from after the game from Lake McCree, and I asked him, when you were rehabbing, did the offensive staff say, hey, when you come back, it's gonna be different this year, we're gonna target you more? And he said, not really. To me, I think it's just Miller Moss. And I don't know about last year, I'd have to go back and look, but I believe McCree was running a good amount of routes last year, and it just seemed to me like Caleb Williams wouldn't look his way, and Miller Moss, he's just looking for the open guy. And a lot of times we see McCree run that route up the seam, and he's wide open, and Moss has hit him. So I think the tight end resurgence, it doesn't have a ton to do with the coaches. It doesn't seem like there's been a concerted effort to get the tight ends more involved. I just think it's Miller Moss finding the open man, and McCree talked about that a little bit. So it's funny, Ryan. We go into a season and it's like, okay, there will probably be some growing pains with a new quarterback, a new offensive line, and the tight ends. Yeah, you like the young talent, but McCree, he had however many catches last year, 20-something. He'll probably get close to that, and who even knows with his health. And now, all of a sudden, Moss, the growing pains have been minimal. He's been awesome. He's finding the tight ends. Dare I say it, in some moments, the offense even looks better than it did last season, just because Moss is always on schedule. He gets the ball out really fast. I think sometimes Caleb Williams last year, for all those amazing plays he made, the offense would get out of rhythm, and we would see either penalties or just stuff not go according to plan for as amazing as he was. I'm not trying to throw any shade at the guy. The offense now is more on schedule. The tight ends are getting more involved. This just goes back to what we said earlier. The defense looks a lot better. No growing pains. There have been some growing pains on offense, and we saw them against LSU, but fewer than I expected, and Miller Moss deserves a lot of credit for that. I think he's the one who's getting the tight ends more involved.
No, I agree with you there, and that's a great segue, because I wanted to mention Miller Moss, too. Yes. The sort of quick trigger aspect of it. He's getting the ball out fast. Talk about that a little bit. Any thoughts on what Miller Moss or Lincoln Riley, anything about how quickly he's able to get the ball out of his hands?
We've only seen him start for 3 games now. So yesterday he kind of thought I was being funny, but I asked him, what's your greatest strength as a quarterback? Like, not really trying to be funny, but he laughed and just said, bringing out the best in everyone on the roster. Because, Ryan, I don't know about you, but all the preseason podcasts we did, it would be like, well, Miller Moss is this unknown. What does he do well? What does he not do well? And we talk about leadership. We talk about accuracy. I talked a little bit about how in the Holiday Bowl, he wasn't afraid to make some risky throws, but he didn't really put the team at risk too much. And now that we've seen more games from him, I wanted to hear him like sort of scout himself and answer that, because to me, watching him more, I think his pocket presence is probably his greatest trait. Riley talked about how his arm strength has improved a lot since he first got here. So I don't think he has that like Anthony Richardson throw the ball 60 yards for a touchdown on the Colts on Sunday arm strength. Not many guys do, but it's good enough. And there's a reason why NFL draft people are starting to talk about Moss a little bit. He could certainly get there. So I think it's a strength, but that combination of improved arm strength with his accuracy, that's another strength for me. Sticking to the script and finding the open guy, spreading the ball around, that's something that stood out to me. And avoiding, just the pocket pressure, avoiding sacks, getting the ball out of his hand quickly, like I said. So I think there's a lot of really good things with him. And Lincoln Riley said, I trust Miller Moss. He gives us the best chance to win when he named him the starting quarterback. I know there were some people, especially on our site, Jaden Maeva has the higher ceiling. He's more talented. He should be the guy out there. Miller Moss has done a great job of making those people shut the F up, that's for sure.
Wow. All right. I wasn't expecting that. Nice.
Little fire,
Connor. Bringing it.
On the bye week.
Yeah, no, that's good.
No, it's just something, I've been getting my fair share of stuff on the board, and it comes with the territory when you're wrong on a prediction. But it is funny sometimes, like, I remember, Mason Murphy, he could never be the right tackle for USC. In the offseason, all the talk, they're screwed, they're in trouble. And was I a little bit concerned about Mason Murphy? Yeah, but did I say, hey, he has a chance to do okay? Of course. Sometimes people take things to the extreme, and that was another talking point on the board. Jade Maeva, he's outperforming Moss in practice. He's doing way better, blah, 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 blah. And now Miller Moss comes in, and I think if there was like a Heisman watch list released today, you'd have to have him on it.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how he does at a big road environment like that in the big house, and we'll get to see that next weekend. But this week it's the bye, so you could be chill and just watch everybody else what's going on. No break for Michigan. They get Arkansas State this weekend.
That's a break, I think.
They got to get things right. So it's not just a non-work thing. You got to work.
Yeah.
For sure. I would say one of the other things I wanted to bring up for practice, and that's the last topic I had for you before we can do questions and stuff, unless you have something else. So what we got to see, I'll put a picture up if you're watching on YouTube, the new turf. And that's the regular, for Howard Jones Field was a 100-yard field that was grass. They've taken part of D'Anton Field and they've expanded it and knocked things down. And now there's this 100-yard turf field right next to it. And then on the, I guess it would be the south side, I believe it's the south side of the field was Brian Kennedy Field, which was a smaller turf field that would, USC would utilize. But that was going to become part of the new football facility. So for fall camp, they were using it. For the first week or two of practice, they were using Brian Kennedy Field to do some stuff. Now it's gone. So maybe kind of give an update on what's going on with that.
2 fields down from 3, like you said, and that graphic that you have up there tells the story perfectly. So the grass field that you can't really see, that's a full field. They have 2. It's as if they were practicing like normal, just that second field, it's right next to the other one. It's like 2 parallel lines instead of a perpendicular field on the other side, which is what it used to be. So there's still plenty of space. Got to give whoever planned this out credit. They have practice space. They didn't have to be bussed on campus or off campus to practice somewhere else, which I think would have stunk for a lot of those guys. So it looks good, and I'm excited to see the facility. What I always wonder, Ryan, is when this new facility comes out, we always wait to see the guys walk out of the tunnel and then cross the street so we can see injured guys. We can see people who aren't there.
Nope.
Talk to the coaches. Like, will they let us do anything, like that when this new facility comes out? I guess not, and we'll just have to do a better job when we're able to watch in warm-ups who's out there, who's not. It makes it a lot easier when the guys come out one by one. Okay, there he is.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not dressed. Oh, where is this guy? I guess those days are over, so that's too bad.
Yeah, there is kind of a production if you've not been out to practice. It used to come back in the day, Pete Carroll era, when fans could come watch practice. The players will emerge from this tunnel, where the locker room is, and they essentially have to cross, I think, is it McClintock? I think that's the name of the street. And you have to cross a street that's actual with cars and everything, and then you get to Howard Jones Field, and there's a gate, and you walk through the goo gate, and people will tap the top and all that kind of stuff. And there's a sword now at the top of once they erected the John McKay Center, that tunnel, they have this Trojan sword there that usually everyone touches when they come out. But they have like 3 or 4 security guards that are yelling constantly if players are coming out, if they're running, and constantly holding up traffic, and bikers and somewhat pedestrians, but scooter people, just to make sure that the players don't get hit from crossing traffic. And it's sort of a production going in there. And now they'll be able to come right out of the football facility. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the graphic up again. But if you're looking at that field, to the left of it would be where the football facility would be. And in theory, what the plan is that they would just walk out of the building and basically be on the practice field. So like Connor said, we won't be able to watch them come out. I don't think they'll just let us come in to watch them come out of the building. But once they let us into practice, however it's done then, who knows? It could be very different. Then we'd have to kind of scan. But right now it's a little bit easier. But it's probably harder on the players. It's a longer way to go. And you do have to cross a busy, well, not that busy, but a street that has cars on it. And so they have, literally 3 or 4 people holding up traffic and directing and all that kind of stuff.
The days of them crossing the street are over, which is probably good because there have been a few close calls with skateboarders and cars and stuff. And it's probably for the best that they don't have to cross the street. The last practice observation from yesterday that I had, Ryan, it was really interesting to see the defensive linemen. They were still working in their positional groups with Eric Henderson and Sean Nua, but D'Anton Lynn, Doug Belk, Matt Entz, usually Belk would work with the corners, the safeties too, but sometimes Lynn would be with the safeties, and then Entz would be with the linebackers, of course. They were all rotating. So at one point, the corners were with Matt Entz doing a drill, and the linebackers were with Lynn, and then the other guys were with Belk. It was cool to see the rotation, and you watch that, and it's like, okay, yeah, Matt Entz actually has coached secondary guys before as a head coach and as a defensive coordinator. And Doug Belk has been a defensive coordinator, so he has a lot of experience with some other position groups. And D'Anton Lynn in the NFL, he's worked with safeties, but he's worked with a whole bunch of other position groups as well. And you just sort of notice the staff's versatility, whereas in the past, we wouldn't really see that as much. Some coaches working with different position groups. Usually it would be everyone working with their own. And yesterday they were mixing it up a little bit. That was cool to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and do a few questions and get out of here. Back in a minute. All right, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. I'm Ryan Abraham, joined with Connor Morrissette. If you're watching on YouTube, not much of a break. The break is mostly for our podcast listeners. Don't forget, you can get the Peristyle Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, sign up for a VIP membership over at uscfootball.com. Tons and tons and tons of great content go up there every day, almost every hour. You can get an annual subscription for 30% off, so it's a great deal. Go check it out and consume all the stuff. Wednesdays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, a lot of practice updates. After the game, after each practice, Chris's ghost notes are awesome. Tons of words about everything that he's seen, all the observations he's made. He checks a lot of stuff out. Of course, Friday War Room, so you want to get into all that stuff. We have a email question, Connor, from Tina in Rancho Cucamonga. She says, hi, Ryan, and great stuff as always. First question, are you concerned Bear has not started in these two games? Is he being double-teamed or just not performing up to his potential?
I think he missed the whole spring, and the coaching staff said, all right, fine, you're going to have to earn it in the fall. And Gavin Meyer earned starting reps, and Nate Clifton earned starting reps over Bear Alexander. Has he faced some double teams? Yes. But his play is something that I've been watching closely for sure, and his usage certainly. Never in a million years did I think he wouldn't start and wouldn't be as big of a factor as some of these other guys. If you had told me that, I'd say, okay, maybe my 7-5 prediction might be too generous. Maybe that'd be 6-6. Like I felt like last season you needed Bear Alexander, and the truth is, through 2 games, has he done some nice things? Yes, but have they needed him? I don't think so. So I wonder sort of where his head's at right now. I'm not saying anything positive or negative, but I wonder what he thinks, because last year he was like the savior from Georgia. He won the national championship. We need you to come and save the defense. He played more defensive snaps than any lineman on USC's roster. Now he's a little bit lower in the pecking order. He's still clearly in the mix, and he's still a big part of the defense, but it's totally different than last season. And they clearly right now don't need him as much. They will in the Big Ten. He's a guy that they're going to need. But I just wonder where his head's at. It's like, okay, like last year, I was sort of the guy. Now I'm not. Is that motivating him? Is that causing him to switch off a little bit? I requested him today after practice, so I hope we can talk to him, because I'd love to see where his head's at and just see what he has to say, because his usage and just how he's played, it's been totally different than what I expected.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind, like, it's a rotation up front. So it's not like if you're starting or not starting. I mean, he's playing about the same reps, right, as Kobe Pepe, and he plays along with Kobe Pepe, but Nate Clifton and Gavin Meyer, like it's similar, right? It's in the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely in the ballpark, but I can pull up the LSU snap counts here. He didn't start, and he was a little bit lower on the list than some guys who we wouldn't have expected. So you just looking at some of the defensive linemen. So Nate Clifton, 36 snaps. Gavin Meyer, 32 snaps, and then Bear Alexander, 28. So a huge gap, no, but both of those guys started, and they are playing more than Bear Alexander, which, again, is something we didn't expect.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's not like he's not playing. He's in a rotation, and he's like, he missed all the spring. I think that was a big deal for Lincoln Riley, and, maybe there's some motivating factor there too. We'll see, but.
Yeah, and the experience of Meyer and Clifton, like those guys have just played a hell of a lot more college football than Bear, which is something Riley reminded us of. He said, hey, at Georgia, Bear didn't play a ton, even though he made those big plays in the national championship. Last year he did. Like, this is sort of his 2.5 season, if that makes sense. Like, he still is new to football, and I think the defensive staff recognized that. The one thing that is maybe a small concern, has he popped? Like Anthony Lucas has popped, and it's clear like he has made some plays, and Gentry's popped, and even Clifton has had some tackles for loss. And I'm excited, and I'm waiting for Bear to pop. I think that has to be coming next. He's still, in my opinion, is the best NFL prospect on this defense. Now it's time for him to show it.
I agree. Tina's second question: do you think the staff will figure out a way to showcase Branch as an actual slot or route running receiver? Seems to be a decoy, unless it's behind the line of scrimmage.
I totally understand the question. I do think that as the weeks go on, he will be used more. And Lane and Branch both dropped touchdown passes against Utah State.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, like you didn't need to game plan them, and like you know what I mean. Like they didn't really go out of their way to use those two guys, and when they did get balls, they dropped them. Like I expect a much different performance against Michigan. We saw how impactful Branch was against LSU. He was a major part of that game plan, and he'll be a huge part against Michigan as well, and into the Big Ten. It looks like he's probably their best receiver. I know Kyron was awesome, and Jacoby Lane's made some plays, but Zachariah Branch, I think, has the most talent. To me, after 2 games, I think he's going to lead them in receiving yards because he hasn't been out there a ton, but when he does get the ball in his hand, it makes a big difference. And he has been out there a ton. What I mean by that is, like, Hudson's played more snaps. I think some other receivers have played more snaps than him.
Yeah.
I understand the question. Like, he does get a lot of targets either behind or at the line of scrimmage, and sometimes I do think they're maybe being a little bit too cute with him. I'm not going to complain until they lose a game, though.
Yeah. All right. We have a couple questions in the chat. Sagar, what 2 areas, either side of the ball, do you guys believe should be the team's focus before Michigan?
Tightening up pass coverage and just the offensive operation. There were a couple false starts against Utah State and against LSU. Alani Noah had that one that could have been even more costly, but USC still went on to win the game. So I think pass protection and just tightening up the operation overall on the offensive line would be where I start. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to run the ball clearly against Michigan than it was against Utah State. I didn't think they ran the ball very well against LSU, even though Woody Marks found the end zone twice in that game. Those were 2 bright spots, but outside of that, it was really difficult for USC. I expect it to be really hard again. So if you can get the offensive line operation improved, that'll help the run game. That'll help Miller Moss and the passing game. That just avoid penalties. That'll be huge. So I start there. Then defensively, I would just say keep doing what they're doing, man.
Yeah, I love it. George, it's not Jorge, right? It's George. Who do you think Michigan chooses to cover with Will Johnson? To me, he's the best corner in the nation. I think it's going to say a lot about who teams think our best receiver is.
Well, Miller Moss spreads the ball out so much.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
There's not one obvious guy where it's like, okay, this is the matchup where you need to slow this guy down. I don't think we know who the alpha receiver on USC is right now. And I don't think we will for a couple of weeks. So, I mean, maybe Zachariah Branch, but is that in their best interest to have him? Like, Branch is just so unique. I feel like you need to put 2 guys around him and sort of shadow him. So maybe Jacoby Lane on the outside or one of those boundary guys would be my guess. Maybe Hudson if he's not in there over Lane. I believe that USC, like, just the fact that their receiving core doesn't have that alpha and is so deep, it really puts pressure and stress on defenses where last season, like, you'd probably cover Brendan Rice and shadow him the whole game.
Yeah.
You don't have that guy right now.
No, I agree. And I think
– but it's a good thing.
if you have one good corner, like, it doesn't help you as much against USC because literally Moss could just say, I'm going to throw away from that guy every single time because there's 4 dudes I can get the ball to. And just whoever's being covered by him, just don't even bother. From, let's see, was it this Traxel? Do you see the cornerbacks playing closer than 12 yards off anytime soon?
Against Michigan, who can't throw the ball, and you're not afraid of Davis Warren like you are Garrett Nussmeier, I think, absolutely. So I think we'll see a game plan change with that against Michigan. Their receivers, who's the scariest receiver on that team? I don't even know. That's another
tight
thing.
end, yeah.
Yeah, him, but even he didn't do very well against Texas. That's another thing that's...
He had a big fumble, I think.
That's another thing that sticks out to me with looking at the schedule. It's like, okay, last year you had Rome Odunze on the schedule. You were afraid of him, and the Oregon receiver who was drafted high. And just there were skill guys who were clear NFL players, and Penn State has Katron Allen, who's a good running back, but like the surefire guys who are going to leave after this year and go to the draft, maybe the Michigan tight end, but there just aren't a lot of those skill guys. So remind me what the question was. Oh, playing off the line. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think Davis Warren is a scary quarterback by any stretch. He's a guy who I look at him as like a check down. He's not going to make the great throw. He is a game manager kind of guy. You can play a lot closer to the line of scrimmage against him and take some risks, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's also a bend don't break kind of defense, and they're just going to make you execute play after play. So some of it's by design. It's not just like completely soft coverage all the time. This is from USC Football for Life in the chat. For you, Triple Double, can you ask players like Zachariah and Lemon, Jacoby, and others why they have a mouthpiece but never wear it in their mouth? Makes no sense to even have it. I think you have to have one, right?
Yeah. Can they enforce that you wear it? They can say wear it, but as long as you have it, that's probably good. I don't know. That's a good question. Unfortunately, the offensive guy spoke yesterday, so that'll have to wait a week.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think this has come up before, but it's kind of like one of those things where, like, if you're out, we're just right here. Right behind me is like basically the harbor here at Redondo Beach. If you're out there on like a stand-up paddleboard, they're going to be upset if you don't have a life jacket with you. Like, so you're on your paddleboard, you don't have to be wearing it, but it has to be on your presence. Like that's the rule, and they'll actually stop you for that, but they're not going to stop you if you're not wearing it. It might be one of those things that you just have to have it. And if it doesn't happen to be in your mouth, that would be my guess, but I don't know for sure.
It doesn't bother me, and I don't understand why it would bother me.
It doesn't bother me. A lot of this stuff doesn't bother me, but it bothers a lot of people. So, Blackie Chan, always good questions. With how USC has been spreading the ball, do you think? Who do you think will be our leading receiver by the end of the season?
I'm going to say Zachariah Branch, like I talked about earlier. I think he'll be in the best position, even if he's not playing as many snaps as a Kyron Hudson or one of those other guys. His experience last year has really helped, and just how explosive he is. I think he had 56 receiving yards, and 55 of them came after the catch. So he's a guy who, when you get the ball in his hands, those passing yards, those receiving yards will just go up, up, up because he can make so many plays. And then Lane, Lemon, Hudson, Ford, Jay Fair, all solid options. But I think Branch has the highest ceiling, and in an offense, when you're going to spread it out so much, I'd go with the guy who has the highest ceiling. And McCree, we got to throw his name
I was going to
in there.
say, you didn't mention Lake McCree. I was ready. Like, he's the leading receiver right now.
I don't know how long that'll last, but my pick would be Zachariah Branch.
All right. Going with Lake McCree. Just Miller seems to like throwing to him, so why not? And then one last question I see in here from HR Pickin' Stuff. Let me pull it up for you guys. Does the media in the press box pay for soda?
No.
So there's a trend, though, that media just would get free stuff. And they would provide meals, or a meal when you're there. It's just sort of what happens. But I was reading, I think it might be like professional soccer. Like there's the media lunch. It's like $60 if you want to take part. I think you guys had mentioned usually we get a parking pass for media. I think we have to pay for that parking pass at Michigan. So there's something there.
Oh.
But I haven't experienced where they've charged me for anything as far as soda. Sometimes it's very basic, like there could be a soda machine or just some waters or whatever that are provided and some snacks. But most times there's some kind of meal, even if it's just like a box lunch with a sandwich or something. Yes. So, but we haven't done that. But I've read tweets from people that cover professional soccer that there were things like that where you had to pay for meals. So.
Well, then there are some journalists who are so by the book that they don't accept the free stuff, because they would feel like if we take something from USC, that would, then if we say something nice about USC, it's because they gave us a free lunch.
Interesting. Is there anyone on the beat that's doing that?
No, one of the great LA Times football writers, I don't want to say the wrong name, does that.
So he won't eat, or he or she won't eat the media lunch or grab a soda from the soda, because they provide, at USC there's coffee, a soda fountain. There's usually a couple apples and oranges. There'll be a meal, and then sometimes there's cookies and some chips or something. So I didn't realize that. But I think most of the regular beat people do it, but they're sometimes when the Pac-12 would have the media day thing and they'd give away swag. Some people didn't want to take it or something. I don't know why, but yeah, there's some of that kind of stuff. But I haven't paid for any. I think I would boycott like paying for a soda from them. We do get a bunch of free waters though from the Coliseum. Those aluminum can waters that are like $11 or something if you're outside the state. They're like $7 or $8. I don't know how much they are. When we walk around, we see them, but they give us those for free. So
Can't be cheap.
No, they're not. They're not. Everything there is not cheap, but we do get the free waters and things like that. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it. Yeah, I had a couple hundred people watching us live in the chat. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy the bye week. We're not going to do a tunnel vision Thursday night. I'm actually going fishing tomorrow, so that should be fun. Bye week time. And I don't know what you're doing for the weekend, Connor. I'm going to San Diego. My niece just started at San Diego State.
Oh, nice. I remember she was looking at schools. She ended up going there.
Yeah, she's at San Diego State. Been there a few weeks. They got an away game, so no home game. But I'm going to go down there and buy her some groceries. I'm going to make her some cookies a little bit later. Care package, you know. Uncle Ryan.
Yeah.
Uncle Ryan comes down, takes care of my niece, who I hope is not getting in too much trouble down there in SDSU. It's way harder. Like, I mean, you're not that old, but when I was going to school, San Diego State was just like, it was kind of like a joke school to get into. And it was just a party school. And now it's like hard to get into. It's like all these schools are tougher to get into now, especially than when I was going back, when I was going to school. I mean, I could get into places like Syracuse easy, but a lot of these other places, just kidding. Yes.
No, you're right. It's harder and more expensive. Not fun.
It's definitely harder and it's definitely more expensive, which all this stuff. So, all right. Well, that's going to wrap things up. Yeah, hope you guys all enjoyed the show. For Connor Morrissette, I am Ryan Abraham, and we will talk to you next time.